You walked into a room and felt it before anyone said a word. Something was off. The air had a quality to it, a tension that hadn't existed an hour ago. No one else seemed to notice. They kept talking, kept laughing, kept moving through the space as if nothing had changed. But you noticed. You always notice. People have a word for this. Too sensitive. Too much. You absorb other people's moods the way a sponge absorbs water, and somewhere along the way that became a character flaw. Something to apologize for. Something to manage. A therapist's waiting room. A deep breath before every party. A long debrief after a conversation that cost you far more than it cost anyone else in the room. The thing you carry began as something else entirely. It began as the trait that kept everyone else alive. 30,000 years ago, a small band of humans made camp along the edge of a forest in what is now southwestern France. The fire was low. The night had gone quiet. Most of the group slept, but one person lay awake, not from fear, but from something harder to name. The silence had a texture to it that felt wrong. The insects had stopped. The branches were too still. Long before anyone else stirred, that person was already moving, already warning the group, already carrying the weight of a darkness that only they could feel. The group rested because someone was watching the edge. When dawn came, that person was the last one still at the tree line, and the first one the others turned to when something felt wrong. What that vigil cost them is harder to measure. You carry the weight of what others sleep through, and by morning, you arrive at the day already spent. The group eats, plans, argues over the next move, and you are already running a second shift on the night just ended, replaying the sounds, checking the memory of the branches, wondering whether the warning was necessary or whether you read it wrong. That is the loop that lives inside the gift. The awareness that saves the group is the same awareness that never fully rests. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. In the early 1990s, psychologist Elaine Aron at the State University of New York began noticing a pattern across a subset of her clinical clients that had no clear name in the existing literature. These people processed the world at a different depth than most. Bright lights arrived as too much. Crowded rooms drained them within minutes. Strong smells landed as full-body events. They felt the emotional states of people around them, as if those states were their own, and they picked up on details that others walked past without pausing. Aron named the trait sensory processing sensitivity. By 1996, she had enough evidence to publish what she found, and one piece of that evidence changed how researchers read everything else. The trait appeared in over 100 animal species: fruit flies, deer, rhesus monkeys, fish. A trait that holds across that many species and across that many millions of years of evolutionary time does not hold by accident. Natural selection carries nothing across millions of generations without reason. The groups that had this trait survived better than the ones that lost it. David Sloan Wilson at Binghamton University has spent decades studying how traits persist at the group level, not just within individuals. His work on multi-level selection helps explain why a trait with real cost to the person carrying it keeps showing up across evolutionary time. A sensitive member of a group takes on work the others cannot do as well, reading the room before a decision, catching the mood shift before it becomes a rupture, noticing what is wrong about the silence before the danger that caused it steps into view. That function carries a cost. It also carries a reason for still being here. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer communities have found versions of this figure appearing reliably across groups: the healer, the reader of the camp's emotional weather, the keeper of memory whose role requires a depth of observation that most people around them cannot sustain. These roles were not appointed, they emerged, because some minds were built to fill them. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. In 2011, a research team led by psychologist Jadzia Jagielowicz at Stony Brook University placed highly sensitive people inside brain imaging machines and showed them photographs of ordinary visual scenes. Each photograph contained minor changes from the previous one: a shifted object, a slightly rearranged piece of furniture. Most participants missed the differences. The highly sensitive participants caught them. Their brain scans showed far greater activity in the regions linked to deep processing, detail awareness, and attention to fine change. They were pulling out information that the other brains had already discarded, and they were doing it without trying. The human brain, under ordinary conditions, discards an enormous volume of incoming sensory data every second. It has to. The world arrives louder and more detailed than any one brain can hold at once. Most brains manage this by narrowing what they take in. The highly sensitive brain does not narrow as far. It keeps more of the signal. In a world where the wrong signal missed could mean a predator moving in the dark or a child who had wandered too far from the fire, keeping more signal was the whole job. Michael Pluis at Queen Mary University of London spent years extending this research, studying what he calls Vantage sensitivity, the way certain people respond more strongly to both difficult and positive experiences than others do. What his work kept pointing toward was this: highly sensitive people are more shaped by all circumstances. In a hard childhood, they carry more of that difficulty than others do. In a warm and supportive environment, they flourish in ways others around them might not. The trait opens in both directions. More comes through regardless of where it comes from, and that has always been the whole point. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that belongs to this. Most people can walk through a hard week and leave it at the door. For the highly sensitive person, the door never fully closes. A sharp word from a colleague at 9 in the morning is still replaying at 11 at night. A stranger's bad mood on a train becomes something you carry off the platform and into the rest of the afternoon. This is the same processing depth that Jagiellowicz measured in the scanner, still running hours after the moment that triggered it has passed. The brain that catches more takes longer to file it all away. Aron described what her research kept returning to in plain terms. Highly sensitive people process the world at a depth most people never reach, catching the emotional register of a room before anyone in it has found the words. That awareness, arriving before everything else, is where the weight comes from. When a crowded room exhausts you, when one hard conversation leaves you processing for hours, you are finishing a shift that most people walked through without knowing it existed. The person who lay awake by the fire in southwestern France was working. The job was invisible to everyone who slept through it, which is exactly how it has always gone for the people who carry this. The group rests. The sensitive one watches the edge. Nobody says thank you, because they never knew there was anything to thank. The Sentinel does not get celebrated. The Sentinel gets called too much, and the calling starts early. It starts in classrooms where teachers note you cry too easily, in families where you are told to toughen up, to let it go, to stop taking everything so personally. The message arrives from enough directions, often enough, that most highly sensitive people spend years trying to run the sensitivity at a lower setting, muting the signal, building a kind of internal volume control they were never designed to have. The effort is enormous. And it is effort spent dismantling the one thing that was never a flaw to begin with. 15 to 20% of humans carry this trait. Over 100 species hold it across millions of years of evolutionary time. It did not survive because it was a mistake. It survived because every group that made it through a dangerous night needed at least one person awake at the edge, reading the dark at a depth the others were not built to reach. You were never made for a world that asked you to feel less. You were made for a world that needed someone to feel everything, so the rest of the group did not have to. And the next time you stand in a room and catch the shift before anyone else does, before anyone else even knows something has changed, you can remember that this is the oldest job there is, still running in you exactly as it was designed, 30,000 years ago by a fire that needed someone to watch the dark. The world has always needed the people who feel too much. It just forgot to say so. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.